Welcome to DYM Marriage Transformation Coaching, heard in 180 countries, top 1% podcast worldwide. And we are thrilled that we walk alongside marriages that have been suffering and struggling, sometimes for decades. Then they come to our work and God changes everything. Listen in because you're going to hear transformation stories that are going to give you hope that things can change for you, or inspiring conversations with other experts, or teaching that's literally going to give you practical tools to make your marriage better today. My name's Bella Rose. Here we are. Let's go. Heal intimacy biblically. Delight your marriage. Hey, DYM listener, I'm thrilled that you're joining me. So today's conversation is with Shaunti Feldhahn, and she's an author that I have read her books like over 20 years ago. And she was such a brave soul back then and just continues to do really important work based on data and research that she works at. And she's just going to go into it. But some specific myths that she debunks is the 50% divorce rate that she is saying, no, we actually don't have a 50% divorce rate. And the problem with saying that is when people believe there's that high of a divorce rate, they stop trying. And so I think it's pretty awesome that she is dedicated her life to getting things corrected and making sure folks have accurate data because it informs their decisions about their life and ultimately their marriage. All right, let's dive in. I'm thrilled because my friend Shaunti Feldhahn is here with us and just so thrilled. So Shaunti, I read your book For Women Only back. I think I might have also read For Men Only, which came out after
Good.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, just sorry, I broke
Both
the rule
sides.
a minute. Both sides. Back probably when it came out. And it was very formative in the way I saw men and women differently. It was very, very helpful. And I remember when I was grasping at straws in my first marriage, trying to figure what the heck is going on. It was a helpful start to my understanding of differences and respecting those differences that God has given us as men and women. So anyway, I just thank you for the work that you've done and the courage you've taken to do this. Big deal.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I love your podcast. I love being on with you. So thank you.
Oh, so welcome. So welcome. Well, yeah, could you do an official introduction so folks know more about you and what you're about and how long you've been doing this and all of it?
Absolutely. Yes. It's funny because every time I sit in the seat and talk about the research, I'm like, how did this happen? Because I don't have the type of background that most people do when they're talking about relationships. I actually started out on Wall Street. Like I was an analyst in New York. And yeah, I know, crazy. And
Yeah.
so I did not realize that during those years that I was learning research and analysis, that kind of thing, that I was also developing a skill set that would be used in a very different way. And so today, and for the last 20, close to 25 years now, basically I've been a social researcher. My husband, Jeff, and I, we do a lot of research studies. And there's this one calling that we feel, no matter what the topic is, it's basically digging out what are the little things that make a big difference to help us thrive, right? Like if you just know this or just try that, that often statistically it'll make a big difference. So that's what I tend to do.
Wow, that
Yeah.
is so cool. And that looks like books and speaking and projects. Is that how you would kind of
Correct.
define your day to day?
Yeah, so we do a project basis. So, for example, like you talked about For Women Only and For Men Only, that was a project to understand the things that we tend not to get about each other, that tend to impact us, that tend to create good marriages or actually cause hardship if you don't realize it. And so that would be an example of something we did multiple big nationally representative studies to understand how men think. Right, or how women think, and put it in a book, speak about it, podcast, just all the things. And we've done about 15 of those now. those big projects, big books based on these nationally representative studies.
So can you tell us some of the other projects you've had and what were the kind of themes that you found?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, in addition to the understanding men and women stuff, which we've continued to explore that over the years, but distinctly, one of my most favorite marriage related studies was when we studied the happiest marriages to find out what they were doing differently. that was that was such a fun project. And so we identified all these things. It's like, wow, this little thing really makes a really substantial difference. So we've also studied things like money and sex, the two of the big argument starters in marriage.
Yeah.
And most recently, we've done a bunch, as you can tell. Most
Yeah.
recently, I've just completed a couple of big studies around mental health. And so not just mental health in marriage, but overall.
Wow. Yes, because mental health, I think there was uh, um, a psychologist who told me that certain types of mental health can result, it's like 90% divorce rate, just these like crazy amounts. So did you find some of those just dramatic things?
So I'll be honest with you. One
Okay.
of the other studies that I did was on divorce rates.
Oh my
and
gosh,
there's
good.
and there's a lot of urban legends out there about divorce rates. And in my view, that is one of them. So that
Wow.
certainly there are absolutely issues that come along in marriage with certain mental health problems and illness, any kind of illness, any kind of trouble can cause marriage issues. But in general, what we found that has been really encouraging
Yeah.
is that truly most marriages are strong and happy for a lifetime. Not all. There's unfortunately a good cohort of people who struggle. But in general, the idea of a 50% divorce rate is a total urban legend. It's a myth. It doesn't exist for society as a whole. It's never gotten close. So some of those things that we believe are actually really discouraging and make you give up too easily. Doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, obviously, like, right? Like those issues do occur, but the majority of marriages thankfully make it through.
Okay, fascinating. Yes, very different than I'm familiar.
Yep.
So where are these studies coming from? How do you know they're accurate? All of that. Inform us, please.
Yeah. So you can actually this is now 10 years old. Like, it's my data is old, but it's actually gotten better since then. But I actually wrote a book called The Good News About Marriage. That was debunking some of these really discouraging myths. Like, there's plenty of bad news out there that's real,
Yeah.
but let's not let's not blow it up beyond where it needs to be. Like, this institution that God created called marriage, like, we haven't broken it. Like, it still works.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I did the reason that I wrote The Good News About Marriage actually started years before, when I used to be a newspaper columnist back in the day when there were newspapers. And one of the columns I was writing was about divorce rates and divorce. And I wanted to accurately cite the divorce rate. Like, everybody knows it's about 50%, but I wanted to look up what the actual number is. So maybe it's not 50, maybe it's 48.7, right? Like, what's the number? So I go to the Census Bureau and I go to the Bureau of Vital Statistics and all the places, and I'm looking up these numbers and I'm like, why do none of the numbers that I'm seeing match the narrative of a 50% divorce rate? And having been a social researcher for all these years, I had seen very personally, in talking to thousands and thousands of people about their marriages, just what people believe about their marriage, how much it kind of creates a narrative that creates a pattern, that creates behavior, that creates outcomes.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that we've found in general is that, for example, there's really just one factor, one common denominator under whether a marriage ultimately makes it or not. There's plenty of issues that come up, but really it's whether the couple has a sense of hope or a sense of futility. And, if they have a sense of hope, like this is rough, but we're going to get through it, they usually do. It's when you start thinking the ship is going to sink anyway, that's where the futility starts coming in. And you start thinking, well, if the ship is going to sink anyway, why bother spending so much time trying to bail it out? Like, just take all that energy and try to escape the wreck intact, right? And so I had seen basically in all these people that the sense of futility itself is one of the main things that undermines the marriage. And we have a culture-wide feeling of futility about marriage. And so when I started looking at the Census Bureau and all these other sources of statistics, and I did not see the data that matched the narrative, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, if that is true, that's a really big deal. And so I went on this very long and complicated quest that make my head hurt, to try to figure out a sort of better numbers. Like, what are the real numbers?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what the good news about marriage was about.
Great. So what are the numbers then? What
So
did we get to?
here's why it's so hard to debunk the bad numbers,
Yeah.
is that the good numbers, the actual numbers, are not as cut and dried as you want them to be. Like, there is no such thing as like one definition of the divorce rate. Because it's like the divorce rate for how, are you between these ages and these ages? Is it the projected divorce rate? Is the percentage of the people in any given room who have been divorced? Like, what's the divorce rate, right? Like, and one of the things that we found, just to cut to the chase, is that one of the numbers that I think, for example, is a good representation of a reasonable, like the way people think of divorce. And this was, like I said, this was more than 10 years ago. The numbers have gotten better since then. But when I wrote the book, 71% of people were still married to their first spouse.
So
And the
71% of
And the
people that had gotten married.
29% who were not still married to their first spouse, that included everyone who had been married for 50 years and their spouse died. That wasn't even the divorce rate. That's just marriages that have ended. That's death and divorce. And so it had to be less than 29%. And so you can add in some factors, like there's about a 14% rate of widowhood. There's like different things you could figure out statistically. But basically, you could kind of, again, this was more than 10 years ago, kind of squint sideways and say maybe there's a roughly 25% divorce rate ish,
Wow.
which is still way too high, but it's a universe better than 50-50. And candidly, some recent numbers that I saw, the numbers have gotten so much better since then. The Census Bureau released, gosh, I want to say last fall. Don't quote me on that. I have to go look it up, but it was a little more than 6 months ago. That the latest numbers are that 77% of people are still married to their first spouse.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so 23% aren't, which includes death and divorce.
Mm.
So anyway, the bottom line is that's just one statistic. There are so many other ways of looking at it, but never anywhere close to what we've been led to believe.
Interesting. So here's one thing because it's interesting. I almost want to ask you to do something if I need to ask you.
Away, whatever.
Could I ask you maybe to confirm any of those numbers, and in the intro when I do this or in the outro or something, I'll be like,
Sure.
Shaunti told me afterwards that for sure,
Yeah.
Yeah, because my what I've looked into hasn't been the same, but
I can tell you those numbers for sure because those are the ones I published in the book.
Okay. Yeah, that would be amazing if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And then I'll I'm thrilled about that. And this is a really good opportunity, I think, because there are times that, like, for example, what I said before we started recording, my information comes from people who come to me for coaching.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
I've done over a decade of that. And so that's what I'm thinking about. My context is all these people that I talk to, they are pursuing me for marriage help because
Yes,
they
for a
need it,
reason.
right?
For a reason.
Right. And so there are people that see studies, and I would love for you to help us to understand what studies are trustworthy, because there are times that people listen to a study when it actually did not have good methodology in how that study was created.
Correct. I'll give you an example related to the divorce rate, and I'm going to try to avoid nerding out too much here.
I want it. I really do.
Okay. For example,
Yep.
one of the reasons people think there's a 50% divorce rate is that a lot of people in kind of academia, demographers, the people who do those kinds of studies, they will often project that, you'll see a study that says Professor so-and-so projects a 45% divorce rate. Now, I just have to say, mentally take a big red pen and circle the word projects, right? Like it's a projection. We've never hit that number, but that's a projection. Now, why? Well, one of the big studies that a lot of the key people rely on is one that I went and looked at in great detail because it was so well used as a source for these projected numbers. And it's called the National Survey on Family Growth. Okay, this is a CDC. It's a great data set in terms of just a huge data set, tons of people. So the National Survey on Family Growth and it asks a bunch of questions, including, have you been divorced? And, how many years have you been married? And so it allows, one would think, to be able to kind of estimate what the divorce rate is. Here's the problem. When you look at the National Survey on Family Growth, you see these super high divorce rates that absolutely do get close to the 50% number. The problem is the National Survey on Family Growth is a study of fertility, and it's done with people age 17 to age 44.
Oh.
And so one of the problems is that I think it was something like 35% of the sample was married before the age of 20. The actual statistics for people married below the age of 20 is something like 4%, right? People who marry below the age of 20 have super high divorce rates. So this particular study found super high divorce rates because it was all a study of people who were married very young. And it didn't even reach, because again, if you got married later, like most people today get married age 29 or age 30. That's the average, right? 29 for women, 30 for men. Okay. So people who were married at the age of 25, you would want to see what percentage of those people have been married 20 years. Like that would be a good thing to know, right? It only goes up to age 44. There's no way to know how many of those people had made it to 20 years.
Wow.
So all of these factors came together to make this really cool survey, which was basically a survey of people who got married really young. And that would have been an interesting finding. Hey, if you get married really young, there's actually a much higher divorce rate associated with that. But the problem is it got folded into this national narrative on marriage as a whole, which it was not appropriate for. And so that's, when you see professors who use that study, the average person doesn't realize they're using that study. And they see, oh, okay, well, wow, 45% divorce rate. Gosh, I guess I'm in trouble.
Right.
No, that just drives me absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Because of the impact of discouragement on marriage.
That's right. And then to your point, futility. And
Yes,
then
exactly.
if you're hopeless, actually is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, what we believe matters. It impacts our behavior.
It really does.
It really does.
And what the methodology and the studies are, it matters.
Yes.
Again, I can nerd out on this all day, and I know your listeners' eyes are glazing over as they're trying to listen to me nerding out on that, but it really does matter.
It does. Well, that's part of what I wanted to bring you on and talk about is, sometimes I'll read books and it's about marriage or intimacy or what have you. And there's a lot of reference to whatever study or whatever. And then just like me, my experience of the challenges of marriage or the challenges or what have you are based on people who come to me.
Correct.
And
Yes.
that is a unique sample set. It is not
Correct.
everyone. And so when I see, a study by somebody who's not a researcher, even though it's a lot of people, and I'm wondering what was their methodology, because who is it that's actually within this study? Who are answering, and how did you ask the question? Was the question a leading question, or was it a
Yes.
question that was open-ended and they could answer it themselves? What are
Oh
your
my
thoughts?
gosh. It was so funny when we started this process of, because when we listen, survey design is a science. Like it is like you have to do it right in order to get good data. And when we started, God provided this unbelievable advisor who was our advisor for 20 years named Chuck Cowan. He used to be chief of survey design at the Census Bureau.
Wow.
And he just felt like God was telling him to help us. Like he was amazing. And that at the beginning, when we were learning what the heck is involved in good survey design, and things like how to ask questions, he was brutal. Like we would submit, like, here's like, we want to try to get at this hypothesis. Like we've done all these interviews. And so I've had this hypothesis and this hypothesis about what is true about men or about women or whatever. And so I'm designing a survey question to try to tackle that, to test that hypothesis. And we'd submit them to him. He'd be like, you can't ask it that way. Like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, we worked really hard on that. He's like, I'm sorry. It's like, that's a leading question, or you're setting them up to think this, not that, or
Exactly.
whatever. Like he was brutal, but it was the best education.
Wow.
Working with a true expert for so many years.
And maybe
So
you could even, that's incredible. Maybe you could even share what would be the difference? Like what would produce a certain result and what would be the right kind of presenting? Could you just, for our listener, what's an example? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
yeah, no, I'll give you an
Yeah.
example that I actually think I put in one of the books. I
Okay.
actually think I mentioned it.
Yep.
Um, but let me see if I can actually remember how the wording originally was. It was basically this isn't the exact question because I can't remember
That's
exactly what it
okay.
was,
That's
but
okay.
basically the question started with a very direct, a direct statement. And it was something like, why would you do such and such? Okay. And he's like, everybody who reads this is going to be put on the defensive. Like they're going to be answered from a defensive place. That's not, you want them to answer based on what they actually think.
Yep.
And give them permission to think or feel or say what they actually think or feel or say. You can't ask it that way. And so that's an example of where just presenting it a little bit differently, like suppose such and such was happening. What would you think about such and such? It would be the exact same question, just approached differently. So, because it's all about knowing how the person who's taking the survey is going to experience it, you want them to be able to be candid and
Yeah.
how they actually think and feel. And the other thing that we spend a ton of time on and that we've done for all of our studies is, like you said, sometimes you can get results that aren't really representative because you have a sample that's a particular like mindset of person, or somebody who's particularly interested and motivated by the topic. And so one of the things that we've always done is we hire a big survey company to do a nationally representative survey so that we avoid that. Because it's called a convenience sample, and doing convenience samples is a lot easier and a lot less expensive, but you just do not know about the validity of what you're getting.
That's right. That's right. That might be why it's called convenience. Turns out. Yeah, good.
And there's nothing wrong with a convenience sample. Like if what you're trying to go for is like, let me survey all Christian men who go to dads camps, like guys who care about being fathers. Do a convenience sample at dad camp, like absolutely. And you can say, this was a survey of men who care about being fathers.
Right.
But you just can't say this is a survey of men, right? Like
Right.
this is what men think. No, this is what men who care about being fathers think.
Right. Who happen to be going to dad camps.
Correct. Who
Right?
care so much about it that they're going to dad camp. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
That take off of work. That means they might also have other attributes of their life that allow that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
there's just so
exactly.
many qualifications that you can't, I think what unfortunately happens when people who tout studies that are not well done and documented and qualified is it really is a lack of integrity on the person sharing it because it's creating beliefs in somebody's mindset that are false. And as Christians, we don't lie, even if
We
it's
don't share falsehoods.
we don't
Yes.
share falsehoods.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I know, I think I'm aware of which study you're referring to, about marriage and Christian individuals who are Christian women who are married, for example.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if I'm correct about the study that you're talking about, which is very, very large on sex and marriage, very large sample size, it's actually great value in hearing from what I believe to be the kind of the main people in that sample tended to be women, I think, who were maybe hurting in their marriage, who had issues around sex and marriage. That was the pool from which most of those people were drawn. And there's great value in hearing from that group. And so it's not a lie to present it and to share it and say, we need to take this seriously because we do. Because if there are Christian women who feel like, they've been abused, they've been hurt by the church, for example, that is really important to hear from. It's just, you can't generalize that. And it is not accurate to be able to say, so therefore Christian marriage teachings
Yeah.
in the church have caused that hurt. You can't do that. There's all sorts of statistical reasons that I won't get into because again, it would make people's eyes glaze over, but there it's just, you just can't make those generalizations. And
Right.
there's all sorts of ways that in that particular study, the analysis was done very rigorously, but without acknowledgement that, okay, we're doing some really rigorous analysis, but we're also drawing some conclusions you cannot draw from that analysis,
That's right.
unfortunately.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. I think the issue was identified. The pain was identified in this sample size that were unique, I would say conveniently determined and chosen and created.
Yeah.
But to your point, the answers I don't think are correct. And I don't think they're necessarily biblical. And as Christians, I was just having a conversation with somebody yesterday who just feel so empathetic towards this person
Mm,
who has chosen a LGBTQ lifestyle. And
yeah,
it doesn't mean they've chosen their actual temptations and proclivities of LGBTQ. I think we all have certain temptations, and I think there's some people that have specific temptations in a certain direction.
absolutely.
But the question is, did they choose to walk that out? Did they choose to pursue it? And if they chose to pursue it, the desire grew and grew and grew, and then they latched onto this cultural norm and ability to go there in a public and embracing it
Right.
way.
Correct.
And so I'm talking to this person yesterday. I'm so grateful that they're willing to share this, their
Absolutely.
journey in that, right? But to recognize at the end of the day, what does it mean to be a Christ follower? What does it actually mean? Well, it means that I take this Bible and I put it above my head and I put it above my understandings and I put it above opinions and I put it above
Yeah,
studies and conclusions. And I say, this is the Bible I follow because Jesus died for my sins. God created the earth. I get to live in his life. And so that means I submit to his will, not because I understand it, but because it's right and I'm not. And so I think the survey identified the issue, but I think the answer denied a lot of that scriptural goodness and yes, maybe historical marriage resources didn't attribute some of the good nuances that maybe would have allowed space for that. And I, suffered a lot in my marriage from some negative beliefs that I think could have been different, maybe, and should have been different. But it doesn't mean that there haven't been really good biblical teachings over time, and we get to just upend and really call them terrible things when
I
they are
know.
following the same scriptures we are.
I know. It's really hard. It's essential, but it is challenging. It is essential to be able to hold two things at once. It's essential to be able to say that the as close as we can get to scriptural truth about marriage, which is we're never going to be able to get it perfect. Like we just
Yeah.
won't. Like we are human. We're trying to follow a God who has a infinite mind, who has tried to present stuff to our little finite mind people
Mm,
on how to live, and like you said, putting the scripture above all and trying as best we can in goodwill
in
to live
goodwill.
that way, right?
Yes.
And to follow that. It is at the same time, you can also say that there are people who have tried to do that, who have also hurt others because of the way they've done that. And so you have to be able to acknowledge both those things, but it doesn't mean, proverbial throw out the baby with the bathwater. Like it doesn't mean that, so therefore all of these, as best we can, Christian marriage teachings need to be thrown out. Because I could make the same claim about some of the folks who are saying we should throw it out. Because if you then say, oh my gosh, look at the pain that's been caused, we need to throw out all these teachings. Well, what are you teaching? You're teaching bitterness. You're teaching leaning into your hurt instead of, can we walk in forgiveness? Can we try to figure out what's freedom, rather than having some of these like litmus tests, being on patrol all the time for whether something is like good or bad, right or wrong. I mean, not that discernment isn't important, of course it is. But that is itself a type of hurt.
Yeah.
And that is itself not leading people into wholeness and grace and forgiveness, which is so crucial for marriage. And so you can actually say we have to be able to have grace with one another and hold all of this together and say that some of the traditional teachings may have not been worded correctly. I mean, my original editions of For Women Only and For Men Only were some of the ones that they were attacking
Mm,
as, as being damaging. And it's
mm,
like, well, actually, there were some ways that I worded something in one of the original printings of the original edition that I actually got a call from, well, you know what? I'm not going to say her name because, but anyone would know her, a wonderful Christian woman leader. And
yeah.
I got a call from her saying, you have to change this. Like like this could be hurtful the way that this sentence or two is worded. And I looked at it and I went, oh my gosh, you are so right. Like I just didn't see it that way. But coming from this woman came from a background of trauma.
Mm,
And so she read it from that background and I went, oh my word. And so in the next printing, we changed it because she was totally right. And so that kind of thing, yes, we need to be willing to do that, but we also need to have grace for the fact that so many of these ministries have helped so many millions of people as well.
yes. 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 Well, it's interesting that you should say that because I received an email couple, I don't know, was it yesterday or something? And I want to train our team on how to respond to these things because that's just the way you do it. And
Yeah.
they have to know, we have to know. And so the question that I think is really helpful for a lot of people is what happens is I think a lot of times people nowadays, and maybe your studies say that it's always been this way, maybe, but what I hear a lot of times nowadays is other people could be offended by that. And so you should stop. And it's like, well, were you offended by that? Did that harm you or did it harm an imaginary person you've made up. Because, my husband is from Mexico, and a lot of people are really concerned that Mexicans might be offended by appropriate blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I don't care. Like, wear the thing. We think it's great. It's fun. This is awesome.
That's funny.
But
That's
all these
awesome.
people are worried. You might be offending his people. It's like, ask him. Ask him
Yeah,
if
right.
he's offended. And so my response to this person was, you might be right. Curious if you could share with the person that was misled by this statement, if they could reach out to us so we can clarify and give biblical insight. But the truth
Oh,
is,
that's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. But that's what I think we need to be willing to engage, but also be willing in a generous, tender way. But I think we don't realize that we are. Sorry, this is my broken hairbrush. I just
I
decided
can see. I was like, what is she holding? It's people who are watching who are not watching on video. Okay, she is holding up this like pink handle. I don't know what it is. Okay.
It's not easy to get this, Shaunti. So it's a
Okay.
major.
All right.
That's right. We break hairbrushes around here. Um, but yeah, I think what we don't realize is I think with grace and charity, but we need to invite people to, tell me who it is. And then I'm happy to have a real conversation with that person, but making it up as this hypothetical, it's just exhausting because go ahead, Shaunti.
No, because I definitely don't want to interrupt you, but here's what I think what you're describing.
Yeah.
We're describing a culture of fear. Right? We're worried about, and it's not let me just be honest about this. And somebody's going to hate that I'm saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a little bit of anxiety about some things. Like anxiety is there for a reason. Like when I got my PhD, I one of the things that I spent a lot of time digging into was, like there's actually some good things about anxiety. It makes you like think about things that you need to think about. Like, my son is a little anxious. He lives across a very busy street from his campus. He's a little worried about getting hit by a car. Well, he should be, right? Like that keeps him safe. And now if it would be disordered and inappropriate if it kept him from going to class, right? And it's the same thing. Like, is that going to hurt somebody's feelings? Like, that's a good thing to be wondering about. Like, wow, is this going to offend somebody who's already had a lot of offense dropped on them that I need to be thinking about, especially as a follower of Christ, right? Like, I need to actively be always putting kindness, for example, at the forefront. We're commanded to do that. The fruit of the Spirit, we're commanded towards gentleness and patience, right? So that's not a bad thing. When it becomes a bad thing is when it becomes so fearful that we feel like we can't step into saying and doing the things that we know we should be saying and doing because somebody is going to get offended or upset, because there is no way in this world to avoid that entirely. You can and should, in my view, do as much as you can to walk in kindness and gentleness and patience and goodness and self-control and all the fruit of the Spirit. But you can do everything that you can do, and still somebody is going to end up feeling hurt no matter how you try. And so that's the issue. Is I do think we need to be careful. I do think we need to walk in kindness and be aware of how what we're saying is being received. But that does not mean that you don't actually end up saying it if it's something that needs to be said.
Yeah. And fair and right. That's exactly right. Kindness is so important. That is the way Jesus walked. But I think Jesus was consistently misunderstood, and he wasn't always trying to correct misunderstandings,
True.
and even Paul was zealous for God, and he was killing Christians or persecuting Christians because he
Of a misunderstanding. Yeah.
because he thought he was doing right, and Jesus corrected it, right? Got him on the right track. But throughout his whole existence, and then his, Christianity often have misunderstood Jesus as well. So, I mean, I guess what I think, even when we have the very best of intentions, people are going to misunderstand us. And I think
Yep.
sometimes it's also really important as believers. So many times Paul talks about encouraging other believers.
Mm,
Encourage them, encourage them.
yes.
He even goes and he says he's going to travel all the way to this other church, and he's already writing them a letter. I don't know why he needs to travel there, but he does, to encourage them. I still have my broken. It's helping me think. It's really
No,
helping.
absolutely.
Thank you. But he was going there to encourage them, even though he was risking his life. He was about to face death. He wasn't there to pray for them or heal them or any of that. It was just to encourage them. So I think when we can't give other believers the benefit of the doubt, and we aren't poised to try to encourage them and come alongside, like Shanti, there are times in this conversation you're disagreeing with me, but you're not out to tear me down and say negative
Right.
things about me, right? Because we're both believers. We both love Jesus. We want to help anyone who's listening, right? And a fellow believer would want to give the benefit of the doubt that, oh, well, yeah. I mean, how cool is it that I see something that maybe Shanti and Bella don't see? Like, maybe I have a gift to do something and I need to start a ministry and start inviting people to, do this. And I didn't even think about it. No, 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 no. Rather than going towards Christians that are seeking to produce life and encouragement and love between couples to give healing and produce good fruit, and then going and just tearing them down. It's not a godly way. It's not a godly way. Um, so I think you have been wildly courageous in your work, even from the very beginning. But one thing I have seen in my work, but again, it's a sample size.
Mm, yeah.
But I will say, doing this a decade now, I have seen a lot more men coming to me with wives that are seeking divorce
Mm.
much more regularly. And
Oh, I'm so
yeah,
sorry to hear that.
it's tragic. It's tragic. But I have also heard studies about that the shift is wives are filing for divorce more often than men. And I'm curious if any of your research, I'm putting you on the spot, but do you know of any research that
Well,
disagrees with that?
there's two things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Wives filing for divorce more often than men, and whether there's been an increase in, regardless of who actually files,
Yeah.
an increase in women asking for divorce, like being the ones to initiate it, regardless of who files, because those are two different things.
Yeah, that's true.
And because it has been the case for many, many, many years. That if you ask, like, part of the good news about Marriage Study, I interviewed a bunch of divorce lawyers. And again, that was more than 10 years ago.
Brilliant.
And this was
Crazy.
a trend. This was a trend then as well, of women being the one to file for divorce because of the way divorce law works. That often the women were given the advice that it was better for them in the court, etc., if they were the ones to actually file. So, and
Oh,
not being a divorce lawyer, I'm going to let somebody else speak into that because I don't know
okay.
all the pieces and parts of that. But the other thing that you mentioned is not related to filing. It's related to who is the one initiating, seeking, asking for the divorce, saying this isn't working. And I wouldn't be surprised if the ratio of divorces sought by women has increased as our culture has gone in some of these directions that we've been talking about, which is kind of you don't have to take that from him. You got bad advice. You don't have to, whatever. And listen, again, I am going to be the last person in the world to say that if you have an abusive marriage, absolutely, you need to get to safety. If there is abuse going on, get to safety and seek help from a pastor who you trust. But in most cases, we're not talking about abuse. In most cases, and this is all part of the research Jeff and I have done over all these years, in most cases, you have a husband and wife who started out really caring about one another, and they're both trying hard. And maybe they don't know some of these things about each other. Maybe they're just unaware of how certain things are being perceived. And so they're trying hard in the wrong areas and they're missing each other, or they're trying hard and they're actually doing something that hurts one another without intending to. That's something you can come back from. That's something that if you will believe in each other's goodwill, one of the one of the findings from our study of the happiest marriages is that one of the things that was very common among the people who went from the most difficult marriages to the best ones is that they chose to believe the best of their spouse's intentions
Yeah.
towards them, even if they were legitimately hurt, even if, like, ow, like that really did hurt. And even if that was very true, you can still believe that this person cares about me. And so there's another explanation there other than they were trying to shred me and take me down because they don't care about me.
That's
And
right.
so that's an example of something that is absolutely transformative that I think we're at risk of losing when we cheer on the takedown of marriage resources.
Mm, mm. Oh, that's so powerful, Shanti. Yeah, I completely hear that and agree. It's another way of saying it is some level of benefit of the doubt that likely our
Yes.
spouse did not have great resources, did not have great role models. They're pulling from what they know. And I mean, I love coaching men. That's my favorite people to coach. We had a breakthrough yesterday where a man said
Aw.
that yeah, I mean, we have breakthroughs all the time, but yesterday, let me tell you this. So after 10 years, they've had 7 nights together in the same bed. That's
Oh,
the most they've had together in 10 years. Yeah. So I don't know
that's
if I'll
so
be able to put
heartbreaking.
that in because it's a little more direct, but there's just like these things like I love, and only he's done the work. That's it. And so these kinds of things can happen when a husband leads and a husband changes and a husband becomes the
Yeah.
man he's supposed to be. So it's not to say that men don't need to work. They do, and they
Oh, for
can.
sure. All of us do.
We all do. That's
Yeah.
right. Um, and there's this level of, I remember this one study from, it's definitely not the one we're talking about, but there's another one that's just so, the sample size is so narrow, but it's blown out to say it's all of this big group of people. And yet when I looked through all the study and all the notations, it's a very narrow sample size, but the person is consistently blowing it out like this is everywhere. And
Interesting.
it's so tragic because to your point, beliefs. And here's the thing. If you think a spouse approaching his wife for sex is coercive, where do we go from there? We've got an 80% difference of libido drive. Husbands have 80% higher drive. So he can't approach her? What can he do? Like, what is he allowed to do? What tightrope can he walk if he can't even
I
approach her?
know. I know. Well, and one of the things we found, I'm just going to say this
Uh-huh.
because it's worth saying.
Yep.
One of the things that some people have been frustrated by is like, oh, we're always talking about the husband as having the higher libido. Well, what about the wife? Okay, 24% of the women, we did this big study for Secrets of Sex and Marriage, one of our other books, and 24% of the women were the ones with the higher drive. Great. Okay, but okay, for the for the majority
Yes.
of where the husband is the one who has the higher drive, and it's not, it is a tightrope in some marriages. Now, here's the thing. Again, can we just like acknowledge that again, your sample is people who are hurting.
Yep.
Um and if you go broader, most marriages, what we found in the study, which was nationally representative, it was actually the largest matched pair study on sex and marriage that's ever been done.
Wow.
I know, it was like, again, very expensive, but we
Wow.
wanted me and Dr. Michael Seitzma, who's a sex therapist, we wanted to be able to make some pretty robust claims where the data supported it.
Wow.
And one of the things that the data supports is that, you know what? Most people are generally happy in their marriage and their intimate life. And
Uh,
and there are certainly plenty of issues out there.
Yep.
But in general, no, most people, they may not get the intimacy thing may still cause arguments, and somebody may not know how to approach their spouse, and all those things. But in general, most of the time, most married couples are connecting and enjoying that part of their married life.
Isn't that sweet? How many people were in your study? I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, well, a matched pair study is expensive. Matched pair just means that anonymously it was a husband and a wife. So we
Wow.
knew who was married to who, even though they were all taking it independently. So
Okay.
yeah, we had 501 married couples in this study, which that I know that sounds like not a lot because that's only 1,002 people.
Yeah.
But for a matched pair study, that's huge. It's very
Really?
complicated. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine my husband and I taking the same survey. I would just there would be so much effort on my side to get him to take a survey. I mean, there probably was more than 5 questions. How many questions were on there?
Oh, I think that survey we had like 45 questions.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can imagine.
it took a good like 15, 17 minutes, something like that, which is about as much as you want to make it. No,
Okay.
I think it was maybe a little bit less than that. It was maybe 13. Forgive me. It was
That's
3
okay.
years ago
It was
that
3
the
years
book came
ago,
out.
but it's in the book. Remind me of
Yes.
the book. Which book is that one in?
That book is called Secrets of Sex and Marriage.
Okay. Oh, that's very cool. And a lot of it is around intimacy. And
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's the topic.
that's the topic. And then is it for Christians and non-Christians? Was it the whole gamut?
Well,
Okay.
all of our research, because it's all nationally representative,
Yep.
all of it is robust regardless of your belief system. But we say, Dr. Mike and I say at the very beginning that we are going to be approaching this from a Christian perspective, and
Yeah.
that we hope people who are reading it from a different perspective will just recognize that we're coming from that application.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool to hear. All right. Anything else you think would be important for contextual nuance? Anything that we didn't kind of go into?
We could talk about this kind of stuff
Forever.
for hours.
Forever. Forever. I just want to make sure if there's any kind of final qualifiers that you would like a listener to have as their
No, I think we're
process.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you mind praying for somebody listening?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Let me close this out in prayer. Lord, I know that there are so many people who are listening to this who are in delightful marriages,
Mm.
and those who are struggling and desperately longing to be able to delight in their marriage. And so, Lord, we pray that you would see those who are hurting, that you would come alongside. Lord, help them to be able to look to you first and foremost, but also with your strength to be able to look at their spouse and to see someone who loves them, who cares about them, who appreciates them, someone who wants the best for them. And to believe that, Lord, help them to believe the best of their spouse's intentions, and to not, through their hurt, put on something that is not true about their belief. Lord, I pray that you would open the eyes of their heart, that you would transform them due to the renewing of their mind, that you would help them to ask you to change their minds if there's any areas that need to be changed. And Lord, we trust that you will be renewing and restoring so many marriages as these people take that step, take your hand, and walk with you. And we thank you for the people listening to this who do have those delightful marriages. Help make them and their marriages a light to a watching world that desperately needs it. And we ask that in Jesus' name.
Jesus' name. Amen. Amen, Shaunti. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Where can folks find you, follow you, all the things?
So easiest way is just to go to shaunti.com, SHAUNTI.com, and you can see all the various resources, the books and everything else.
So good. So good, Shaunti. Well, thank you so much. This was a joy. Really was.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me stop this. Thank you, Shaunti. Wow, what a great interview. And it's really good because I love, again, with the specifics of the data that you shared and how that really does make a difference in the way we perceive things and thus the way we behave. And the hope that we have that God can turn things around in our marriage. So thank you, Shaunti, for all of that. And I just hope that the listener is just leaving with some encouragement and hope that things can change for you. So if you would like more of Shaunti's material, as you can tell, she's working on some really interesting things. You can go to her website. And then if you are looking to implement these kinds of insights and with accountability and coaching and cheerleaders and people praying for you, that's what we do at DYM Marriage Transformation Coaching. So you can go to delightyourmarriage.com/cc and you can learn the information about taking the next steps to even a free clarity call. And I talked to somebody who is graduating or just graduated, and she's like, yeah, I was like, there can't be any hurt in a clarity call. And that was the first step of her total transformation of her marriage and her life by God's grace. So that's what we're here for. Would love to have you go to delightyourmarriage.com/cc. God bless you.